Hello, I'm Todd Bonshire, the manager and curator of the Gold Mining Camp Museum at Monroe Park. Thank you for joining me on another visit to one of the historic sites of the Fauquier County Parks and Recreation Department. Today, we are going to take a look at the John Marshall Birthplace Park, which has ties to two of our other sites, Germantown and the Elk Run Church. John Marshall Birthplace Park is located at 5160 Germantown Road in Midland, less than a mile east of the Germantown Road Route 28 intersection. It was established in 1978 as the first public park of the Fauquier County Parks and Recreation Department. John Marshall was born on September 24, 1755, in what he described as one of the frontier counties in Virginia. In 1753, Marshall's parents arrived in present-day Fauquier County after his father, Thomas Marshall, and his wife, Mary, purchased a parcel of land in Germantown near her father, the Reverend James Keith, the first rector of Hamilton Parish and the Elk Run Anglican Church. The family lived there until 1764, when Thomas and Mary built a house called The Hollow along Goose Creek near the present-day town of Markham. They lived there until moving to Oak Hill, also in Fauquier County, in 1773, when John was 17. In 1785, John became the owner of Oak Hill when his father moved to Kentucky, and it stayed in the family until the 1680s. Thomas Marshall was a man of modest means, but eventually enjoyed impressive social and professional connections. Despite his own family's middling status, Thomas's marriage to Mary Randolph Keith connected him to two first families of Virginia and to Thomas Jefferson, who was Mary's second cousin, or they shared a set of great-grandparents. While living in Germantown, Thomas gained favor among influential individuals who helped advance his career and social standing. Around 1749, Thomas was hired by George Washington as a surveyor's assistant, and later became an employee of Thomas Lord Fairfax, the largest private landholder in Virginia at the time. Thomas set a great example for his son with a remarkable career of service to Fauquier and Virginia. He sat on Fauquier County's first court, was appointed county surveyor, and served 13 years in the House of Burgesses. Thomas served in the local militia during the French and Indian War and the Revolutionary War, where he was given command of the Culpeper Minutemen. After the war, he was appointed Surveyor General of the District of Kentucky, still a part of Virginia, in 1783, and moved his family there in 1785. In 1787 and 88, he represented Fayette County in the Virginia House of Delegates, and was also a delegate to the convention in Danville to consider the separation of Kentucky from Virginia. And in 1791, he was appointed by President Washington Collector of Revenue for the District of Kentucky. Like many at the time, John Marshall was a mainly self-taught man. Encouraged by his parents, the young Marshall read widely, and while living at the Hollow, was tutored by the Reverend James Thompson in return for room and board. With the exception of 1 year of formal schooling at Reverend Campbell's Academy in Westmoreland County when he was 14, Marshall did not receive a formal education. During the American Revolution, John, along with his father, served in the Culpeper Minutemen and fought at the Battle of Great Bridge. In 1776, the Minutemen were absorbed into the Continental Army, and John participated in several battles, including the battles of Germantown in Maryland and Brandywine Creek. He and his father also spent a winter at Valley Forge, where John was appointed George Washington's chief legal officer. In 1780, Marshall attended the College of William and Mary, where he studied law under the famous Chancellor George Wythe, and that same year was admitted to the state bar. After a few years of practicing law, he was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, was a member of the Virginia Council of State from 1782 to 1784. In 1788, was a delegate to Virginia's convention to ratify the U.S. Constitution. He served as an envoy to France in 1797 and 8. Was a representative from Virginia in the U.S. Congress in 1799 and 1800. Was appointed Secretary of State in 1800 and 1801. Before serving as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court from 1801 to 1835. During his long 35-year tenure in the Supreme Court, he presided over many cases, but Marbury v. Madison, McCulloch v. Maryland, and Gibbons v. Ogden were among the most important in American history. In 1803, Marbury v. Madison was the first case in which the Supreme Court struck down a federal law as unconstitutional, and is most significant for its role in establishing the Supreme Court's power of judicial review, or the power to declare laws as unconstitutional. In the McCulloch v. Maryland ruling of 1819, the Supreme Court held that Congress had implied powers not explicitly outlined in the U.S. Constitution. Marshall also held that while the states retained certain powers, the Constitution and the laws made by Congress were supreme and could not be overridden by or canceled by the states. Then, in 1824, Gibbons v. Ogden was a landmark decision in which the Supreme Court determined that the power to regulate interstate commerce was granted to Congress and not the states, and encompassed the power to regulate navigation between the states. Marshall was a dedicated Federalist, and his court rulings reshaped American government, making the Supreme Court the final arbiter of constitutional interpretation and established the court as a powerful body that could overrule the Congress, the President, the states, and all lower courts if that is what a fair reading of the Constitution required. According to Maria Franklin Marshall, a descendant of the Chief Justice, the Birthplace house was no longer standing by 1900. A mound of chimney rubble remained, however, and she said, quote, "There have always been those who have held the historic spot in remembrance," unquote. The location of her famous ancestor's birthplace may have still been well known to descendants living in the county, since it was only 66 years after John's death. In 1902, students from the Marshall chapter of the Phi Delta Phi legal fraternity of George Washington University erected a small monument on this site, and in 1928, the fraternity dedicated the larger current memorial after the 1902 monument had fallen into disrepair. In 1958, the land surrounding the monument and a small trail to it was given to Virginia, and then in 1974, the Commonwealth deeded the land to Fauquier County, with the understanding that it would be used as a public park dedicated as a memorial to the birthplace of John Marshall. John Marshall Birthplace Park was officially opened in June 1978. Today, the park includes a tree-lined half-mile trail to the pyramid-shaped monument and a picnic shelter. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something about the history of Fauquier County, and we hope to see you at one of the local parks soon.